From near-death experiences to the devastation of homelessness, how and where do we find the will to overcome insurmountable odds? And when we do overcome these challenges, how do we pass that story of survival on to others? Life on the Rocks is that place where these stories are heard from those who live to tell them. And now, here is your host, Kyle Miller.
Welcome to Life on the Rocks, guys. I'm so excited to have my next guest on here. His name is Nate Kennedy. This guy, his story is going to blow your socks off, man. But first, this guy started as a scuba diver. How did you do that?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, Kyle. So I was, it's interesting enough. I was a scuba diving instructor. Started scuba diving when I was in high school. Got certified, and then when I went into college, I got certified as a dive master. And I was like, after I graduated college, spent 4 years. I didn't have to do that 5th-year victory lap. Got in and out, and went to Key West to become a scuba diving instructor instead of use my business degree. And I get down there, I'm like, man, everyone's like, holy smokes, dude, we can't believe you're going to Key West to be a scuba diving instructor. That you're living the dream. That's so cool. And I'm like, I get down there and I'm like, man, I didn't make any money and none at all. And it was just awful. And I was like, man, I get down there. I'm like, well, I'm a scuba dive instructor, but I got to get another job. And I'm living in Key West. It's not the cheapest place at that time. So they already told me I couldn't get another job. I needed to be full-time with them. I couldn't work at nights, all this other stuff. And so I'm like, all right, well, that's fine. If I can't get another job, then I can't work for you either because I need to live.
Right.
So I ended up bouncing back and hanging out in the Outer Banks for a while of North Carolina, managing a surf shop and bartending at a restaurant, at a pizzeria for the summer. I was like, all right, we'll figure it out from here. And then from there, I'm like, well, this is only summer work, man. I got to do something other than this, and end up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Randomly moved there. I had a good friend who I moved in with, and ended up getting a job in the mortgage industry. It's kind of where it all started taking off, right? So in 2002, the guy didn't even want to hire me because I was just kind of like a surf bum. He's like, what's this guy really want to do? I've always been, you've known me a while. I'm a laid back individual, man. I'm very even keel, not up high, not usually ever low. So this guy didn't want to hire me. I come in, I have the highest number of sales for the first full month of a new mortgage broker on his team. So it was a little bit different, and I just kept grinding and pushing, and I was, got to the point where I started making good money, and I was working hard, I was playing hard, and I just got burnt out. And so what I did from there is I took 2 weeks off. I took more than 2 weeks off. I just took off, and I put in my notice and went to Costa Rica to surf for a couple weeks and fulfill his, beliefs, right? I guess and go surf for 2 weeks, end up back in the Outer Banks, kind of just hanging out for a few months, not really doing much. Had money saved up that I was just kind of chilling with, and realized I need to do something more, right? So I get back into the mortgage space, and I meet this guy, Ken. Never forget Ken. Still talk to Ken today. He was my first kind of like real mentor who helped me close my first real estate deal. So he was just an entrepreneur. He owned a CD back in the day. He owned a CD shop, right? Sold CDs. And he ended up, and above it was his mortgage and real estate company. He owned the building. He owned other real estate, like just, all this kind of cool stuff. And he ends up helping me get in to close my first real estate deal. So I start slinging mortgages again with him. And then I find this property and I wholesale it. He was like, hey man, I'll buy it from you. And so I wholesale it. Actually, it was deal 2. The first deal I ended up buying, rehabbing, fixing up, and selling, and doing, it was like $100,000, something crazy on the house in profit. And then I end up getting from there, stack some money away. Then I wholesale my first house to him, actually. And I'm like, I got money stacked away. I was like, I'm gonna go build my own mortgage company now, right? So I moved back to Charlotte, start a mortgage company. We start hustling. At this point, man, I was like just full grind mode, and because that's what we do, hustle, grind 24/7, right? And so I get out there, I start doing that, and we grow this mortgage company up. I start hiring people. We then start a real estate company. I'm continuing investing in real estate. We then I go get my builder's license, GC license. We start doing high-end construction homes. We're buying homes, tearing them down. So this time frame, keep in mind, is 2005 from when I started the mortgage company to about 2008. And we just went hard and just kept doing a bunch of deals and building houses and doing all this stuff. And then unfortunately, the market shifted. And when that market shifted, I completely got caught with my pants down, lost everything. I didn't, I was partying hard and working hard, right? So I lost sight. My ego got in the way, and I thought I was having all this success because of me, right?
Right. Right.
Everything I do touches the gold. Just look at it. And so I bought my own bullshit and took my eye off the ball. Didn't realize the market was shifting, or ignored that it was, right? I knew it was, but I just really ignored it because, that won't
Right.
happen to me.
Right.
Mortgage industry tanks. I get stuck with I got a bunch of real estate. That all tanks in value. I no longer have the money to support the payments on those homes, and I end up going completely bankrupt. So, toughest moment that I've ever had, probably in business and in life mentally, was being 27 years old on paper, thinking I'm king dingaling with a few $1,000,000 in equity in these homes and making a bunch of money every month, to being 28 years old, flat freaking broke, nothing to show for it, upside down on properties, sitting down in an attorney's office, talking to him about the process for filing for corporate bankruptcy, right?
Mm.
So just ended up, losing it all. So not only, at that time too, young and aggressive and ego driven, right? Like my ego was big. So it hit hard. And very humbling moment. But, when I realized that I lost everything, I'll never forget when it was all falling apart, right? I was just mentally in a bad place. I was sitting, I'll never forget, with my now wife, girlfriend at the time, in a condo that was that's one I still had, but it was being foreclosed on.
Right.
And we're sitting there, and I saw this happen in the bathroom. We had an empty room that we had a bunch, and I was basically just rolling change, man. Literally, like I had a big some habit I got from my family growing up as a kid, right? The big bucket with change in it. You just throw the
Right.
change in it.
Yes.
And so I'm like, I still have one of those things today in my house.
Yeah.
It's a little smaller. I'm not scared. But so I start rolling the change, and we had it there. We're rolling it. We're putting, all right, we got to get all this money together, whatever we got, right? We got to figure this out. And a freaking mouse runs across the room. I'm like, son of like, now I'm like, I was just living in this, like, one of the ritziest areas of Charlotte at the time, in this beautiful home. I had to downgrade to this condo, right? Because I lost the house. And so mentally I was destroyed, man. I was super depressed. I remember wondering, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? But I'll never forget some words that rang home for me. Like, it is, I've always been one of those, like, all right, this happened, let's move on. Right. So after about 2 weeks, I was down and out. I was having this conversation with my son the other day, because we were watching the show, and he was like, why were these two guys saying that they felt like killing themselves? The show was like, it was interesting because these guys had a tough time, and the story started out for them. I just, I really had a tough time, and they didn't want to accept the fact that they screwed up. So then they come out, and it was like cliche for them to say they wanted to commit suicide. Right now, I am not here making fun of suicide. I understand depression is a major thing, but the lesson to my son was, which I'll come back to where I was at, was like, man, I screwed up. I made the mistake. And so I was trying to teach him that lesson. I was like, when you make a mistake, you have two options. You own it, accept it, and move on. Or you don't own it, you don't accept it, and you look for alternative solutions so you don't have to, right? Like, I was trying to kind of deep, I guess, for the intro of this podcast.
Yeah.
But
And how old is he?
He's 10. But it seemed like it clicked, I'm like trying to teach him that lesson. But that's where I was at after 2 weeks of just being like depressed, had lost everything, had nothing in my name. I've always loved the BMW 7 Series. That thing got repoed, and I just gone everything. And my now wife at the time, we went out, ended up, she was selling real estate. So she started, kind of, there's a couple months there where, like, while I was getting back on my feet, she was supporting us and doing her thing, and went out. We got a car, financed a car in her name, all that good stuff, right? Because I had the BK, so that wasn't going to happen. And then,
Right.
but yeah, man, it was just like, here, I can be depressed or I can fix what I created,
Right.
you know, move forward and do something more. So I would say, that's the little history mirror where I've been at. And that was all, man, that was 2002 to 2008. And think about what we could talk about now from 2008 to where we're at. But I would say that was one of the more challenging moments that I had is in life, right? Because you
Right.
go from having everything to having nothing, and then you realize everything you had wasn't what you wanted anyways. And as you get older and smarter.
You were on top of the world there. I mean, at 27 years old, like rolling in dough, doing whatever you wanted to do, right? And enjoying that lifestyle. And then boom, market hits and it just completely takes you out, man. I mean, that's a big fall. And I'm sure, like you said, the ego's big, but you got to take that and then I love what you're saying here is where you just took that and said, hey, listen, I only got two options here. I can either give up or just move forward. And I love that, man. I think there's a lot of people that, they get into those situations in life where their backs against the wall and some of them just stop. And then some of them are just like, hey, it's a decision. We're going to do this, and keep pressing and keep moving forward. And I love that, man. That's awesome story.
Yeah, and if someone's dealing with a tough time right now and you're listening to this, like the number one thing that always comes to mind to me, well, a couple of things. One, you got to own it. Two is action creates traction. You cannot sit there and do nothing. If you sit there and do nothing, your day if you wake up one day and you sit there and do nothing and you wake up the next day, your life's worse because you did
Right.
nothing. You didn't do anything to move forward. So if you're dealing with a tough time, action creates traction. I don't care if it's the wrong action at that time, but action creates traction. So just make sure you assess your actions after you do them. But that's
Yeah.
what's going to get you to where you want to go and get out of a rut if you're in one.
Oh, absolutely. I was going through the military and they're doing the same thing. Listen, we're going through officer candidate school and going through that aspect of it. And we're out there and we have to make a decision. We got to make a decision. They put all this stress and pressure on you and you're going through all this stuff. They say, make a decision, make a decision, make a decision. Doesn't matter if you make the wrong decision or the right decision, you're making a decision and you go full bore after it. Right. And then you can come back and you look at, well, maybe the next time I'm in that situation, I would have made a different decision. But when you sit there and don't do anything, that's when you get shot. That's when the game ends for you, right? Is whenever you just sit there and freeze and you can't make a decision and move forward with it. That's how I try to live my life. Absolutely, just like that.
Neutral, going nowhere. Yeah, sitting in neutral, you're going backwards. Don't kid
Right.
yourself.
And the thing is, if you're going in the wrong direction, you're at least learning that, okay, this isn't the direction we need to go. We need to go this way, but you are moving. I love it. What are you doing now? Like, what's the life of Nate Kennedy like now after he's gone through all this stuff, gone through, the bankruptcy and coming back and making the decisions to move forward? What do you do now? What's the life look like?
Oh man. Well, it got a little worse after that bankruptcy. So
Yeah.
so I start building my life back, right? Start building back up. I start getting into sticking with real estate at the time, right? Sticking with real
Yeah.
estate, and then started this online marketing thing in 2000, end of 2006 and 7. I started playing around with this internet marketing thing that was going on. So I kind of had that when I lost everything to kind of lean on, and then I got into, just got back into getting some deals done. Finally get kind of on my feet, and I get knock on the door, right? I'm like, all right, what's this? Open the door. Hey, Nate, NC Commissioner Banks, investigator. And I'm here with FBI agent so and so. And I'm like, what is going on? And so these guys try and like create some whole thing going on. And I ended up basically at this point I had to hire an attorney. They were trying to create like this big ring of people in Charlotte to crack this case that were robbing banks and doing these loans and all this shit, right? And I'm like,
Right.
first off, all because I'm the kind of guy, like, if we come up together, like I'm trying to help you come up. Like,
Right.
if I got an opportunity, I want to share that opportunity.
Right.
And so I happened to know like all these guys from high school and college and Charlotte and all these things that we're all kind of getting into doing these deals. And so they tried pinning me as like the guy who was the leader of creating this mass conspiracy and all this, right? And so they dragged me through the coals for 2 years on that thing, right? And they basically said, and I wanted to fight the whole thing. My attorney at the time was like, "Hey, man, you can fight them, but they're fighting you with your own money." So
right.
You might as well just pay them what they're asking and be done with it. So I basically just got strong armed and for cash, right? So at that point, I'm like, guys, man, like at that point, I'm like, I got nothing for the government, like the man's not holding me down, right? So anyways, I that all happened and, just fought through it. And at the end of the day, man, one day at a time, move forward, don't take your eye off the prize. And so got all that buttoned up and off my plate and out of my path and started really doubling down on the internet marketing thing at that point, right? Because now we're a couple years
And what
past.
year was this?
That was 2009, 2010.
Okay.
So they waited until I rebuilt and then they came after me, right? And so bastards. But so I end up going through all that process, but I'd really start getting cranking on this internet thing, and I'm talking and and that's how they got me or came at me, is because I had some videos on YouTube and was doing this, and they're like, "Well, we saw this video on the YouTube of this guy, of the billionaire boy." So I created this whole video for internet marketing launch, and we hired this little boy actor to do like a video talking about how he's making billions flipping real estate, right? And it was a skit. It was a freaking skit. And so they took that as I'm telling them I'm making billions of dollars. And so they're coming after me. Right. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And but that launch went well. We made some decent money. And but that you can't make shit like that up, unfortunately. No. So we build that up. I get really heavy in internet marketing. I built some companies up, teaching some of the real estate stuff we were doing. And the real estate stuff other people were doing that I worked with. And we ended up selling those companies. And I created a company called Funnel Architects with a buddy of mine. And people were hiring us to build and do what we did, right? So like, I've always kind of been a lone wolf when it goes to business. Like if I got a path, I'm going and I'm running. Okay. And in the real estate game, like all these guys that you would do stuff with, if you weren't part of their big bro, high school clique that they had going on, they didn't want to like promote you. So because of that, I had to go figure out how to get traffic. So I learned how to buy Google ads. I learned how to buy Facebook ads. I learned how to build web pages. I'm like, all right, well, I'll just beat you guys. I'll go do it myself.
Right.
So I ended up building these businesses up, doing all that and selling those. And that's how I built those and sold them. And then some of these guys started coming to me going, "What are you doing? Can you help us?" And so then some of these guys started hiring me. And that's how I ended up with a marketing agency. Did that for many years. Treated my family great. I've been good. Built this big business up with a bunch of people. And then all of a sudden I ended up renting an office that was not at my office that I paid for because I couldn't stand being at my own company. Right. There's many lessons inside of that. But so yeah, I mean, that's where I got from there. And it's the story goes on. We ended up getting out of the marketing agency and said, we're going to build our own brands. And that's where we're at now. So now I own all of our own brands. We have a conservative media company that other companies come to. We own basically all of our brands. Everything's online. We're 100% virtual in regards to how we can operate and run the company. And life's good, man. So,
man, that is awesome. I knew a little bit about that story, but I didn't know all of that.
I don't share that one part. You be happy because I haven't shared that whole FBI story.
That's the part I didn't hear before. I knew that you had kind of. Well, I didn't know the scuba diving stuff either. But that's so you went through some stuff.
If I could give your audience one tip, one recommendation.
Yes.
The FBI shows up in your doorstep, and you do not look at them and go, "What the F are you doing on my doorstep?" and slam the door in their face. Go grab your attorney's number, write it down, and walk open and hand it to him and say, "Leave me the F alone," and slam the door again. Don't ever do that. Not a good look.
That's not the correct way to work with those guys.
No. That's probably so. Might have been why I got dragged to the mud for 2 years. But,
you're like, this guy. We're gonna get this asshole.
He thinks he's an asshole. Wait till he sees us.
That's awesome, man. Awesome. I love it. I love the story, brother. And I appreciate you, sharing that with us. Like if anybody, like, do you work with individuals or if, anything like that or no, or they just follow you online?
Yeah, I mean, people can connect with me at Nate Kennedy MD.
Okay.
So the MD back in the day used to stand for money doctor because I
Okay.
was doing a bunch of deals and I had this whole like character created and he had a lab coat on and had dollar signs all on it. But in 2011, we switched it over to Nate Kennedy MD, the marketing doctor.
Okay.
So yeah. So anyways, yeah, Nate Kennedy MD. That's get me on. So those are all my social handles. I'm also
Okay.
at NateKennedy.com. Can hit me up there. And
Okay.
we don't do client work anymore. If we don't own the brand or have equity in the brand, we don't mess with it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, for other people that have tried to hire us, kind of just got out of that.
Right.
But I do enjoy having people come to my office and spend a day and really just dive into their business. So I do that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, but we don't actually do the execution anymore as an agency. And all the execution as our agency does is we own it. So yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, dude, man, I'm just thankful that you decided to share that little story with us, and it just goes to show, like everybody's story that you hear, they all have little different variances, but one thing that they have all in common is just there is this setback that happens to them, or there's this massive boulder in front of them, or there's this just big thing that they have to overcome in their life. And I'm just glad you shared that with us, because I think on IG, I think a lot of people think it's just business is all sunshine and rainbows and making money, and it's that, but it's also you got to go through the bad stuff too. You got to go through the ups and the downs. So I'm just glad you're able to share that with us.
People don't like on Instagram. You don't share because you're so excited about the end result because you don't like I don't look back at I look back at those tough times now and I laugh at them. I'm like,
Right.
it's like I can't believe I went through that. Like, why was I so thick-headed, like,
Right.
there's so much opportunity in today's world and people don't want to share the tough times. So I think it's awesome that you're pulling these war stories out of your guest of like what it took us to get to where we're at. And I
Yeah.
gotta say, like, I look at it and I'm like, why was I such an idiot back then on some of those things? But then I look at it and I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't go through that bankruptcy. And then after I finally recovered from the bankruptcy, I got the FBI knocking on my door trying to come after me, and tell me I'm going to jail. Then when they realized they didn't have anything, then it was like, oh, we're just gonna fine you, you
Right.
know. Hey, we
Man.
can find you millions of dollars. We believe we can find you millions, but we'll take 75 grand a day. I was like, kidding me? So, it's funny because life slaps you, but I think you're going to get slapped around. You're going to get hit. You're going to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And it's how you respond when you get punched in the face that really gets you to where you want to go. You cower, good luck. Go
Yeah.
let someone hire you. You don't
Yeah.
like getting punched in the face, go work for someone else. Let them take the punches and just be a great worker with them and team player with them. But if you don't mind getting punched in the face and moving forward, you'll be just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I said, Nate, I don't want to take up too much of your time today. I appreciate you coming on here with us, sharing that story. And I think people are going to take some good nuggets from that and be beneficial for them in their life.
Thank you.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.